What's up, folks? It's Daniel here with Driving and Dragons, back with another D&D Reacts video. Going to take a look at Roll Initiative again. Miss Brianna's channel has been shooting on up there. I'm wanting to say that it has hit the 1,000 subscriber mark already, so it's been doing really well. And as I stated before, she gives pretty basic entry-level DM and D&D advice, and for the most part, it's been pretty decent stuff. So we're going to take a look and see what this important skills for D&D players is, and we're going to, add some thoughts and see what we can get out of this. Now, while you guys are here, remember, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Hit the hype button. There's little jewels that you can give away on the on mobile. Those basically function the same way as a super chat. So that's a way that you can support the channel and support the efforts that we have here to build cars and give them away and that sort of thing without having to come out of pocket. But I do appreciate the super chats, super thanks, and memberships and all that. Of course, if you're a member, you get everything except intelligence as a dump stat a little early. And so that's a good benefit to have there. But we are going to get cracking right away and see what Miss Brianna has to say about important skills for players to learn.
Hi everyone, I'm Brianna and welcome to Roll Initiative. And today we're going to be talking about some skills that I think are really, really helpful for D&D players. So let's get started. So I think one of the first skills that are really, really important is being able to separate yourself from your character. I think it's really, really important to be able to have knowledge above the table and not use it in the game, and to be able to do things in game that maybe aren't the wisest above table. It's about getting into the role of playing someone else, about seeing through their eyes instead of watching from above and knowing what's going on all the time. And it's really, really good if you can try and avoid using meta knowledge for the game. It's really, really helpful to be able to do this and separate yourself and your views from your character. I think a lot of it comes down to experience. You get to know your character, you get used to how they work, and you start to see things from their perspective. And it's a lot about getting used to it, knowing how this sort of works. So I think it's a lot about just practicing, getting to know your character, and maybe spending some time thinking about it. But I do believe that it is a very, very important skill to have more fun at the table. And
Okay, I hope I didn't just cut her off at the end of this, but the thing about this is she's absolutely 100% right, but she misses half of the coin. She's only showing you the heads and not the tails. Yes, meta knowledge is a problem, and you should be thinking as your character. Far too often you have players who attempt to justify optimal decisions through the lens of their character. So in other words, they know that something, they have some kind of meta knowledge. They figured something out. They want to do something that's optimal in game. So they start trying to justify it through the eyes of their character. Oh, well, my character would think this, so that's why he would do it. And that is flawed playing. You should always be looking at things ground level through the eyes of your character as best as possible, with the important caveat that when it comes to things like getting the group together, working together as a team, maybe not being such a pain in the ass when it comes to moving a plot hook along or moving a story beat along, advancing the actual adventure. Yes, there's some meta there that needs to be done where it's like, yeah, my character probably would be a little more suspicious of this, but I'm going to take it at face value because that moves the game along and doesn't bog us down with me getting satisfied with the answer before we go do something. But other than that, you should absolutely be 100% table level. So what is this other side of the coin that she completely misses? That is when she says, you got to be able to separate yourself from your character, this should not be simply a discussion of separating meta decisions from your player character. The place where, believe it or not, the modern player base generally doesn't struggle as much with that. That is more of a my era thing. That is a third edition 3.5 2000s era thing where a lot of optimization was part of it. That is not as much an old school, like a true old school thing where you're doing a lot of dungeon diving and a lot of deep delving and that sort of thing. And it's not really a super story driven, story obsessed thing either. Where they do fall apart, however, is being unable to separate themselves from their character, not in a meta sense, but in the opposite sense. Things that happen to their character, they take as personal attacks against them. Their character gets made fun of, they act like they're being made fun of. Their character gets persecuted for something, they take it as them being persecuted. Something bad happens to their character, they take it personally. It's obviously an attack on them personally if a roll goes the wrong way or if an enemy targets them or something of that nature. A lot of this comes from the fact that, especially in the modern player base, a good many of these people project themselves into their characters. Rather than make a character to live as that character in that world, they project themselves into that world through the vehicle of the character, and thus everything that happens to the character becomes an attack on their person. This is part of the reason why they struggle so hard with alignment, why they hate it so much, because they want to do something shitty, and when you tell them, well, that's evil, now you're calling them evil, not just their character evil. So she does kind of miss that side of the coin, but overall, that is a very solid piece of advice. Let's see what the second tip is.
Getting to know your character really, really helps with this and multiple other things. Getting to know your character is a bit of a creative practice, and lots of different people do different things to do it. I think a lot of it is about sort of trying new things, practicing, seeing what you can come up with and what you think works for you. If you don't really know what to do to get to know your character, then I have a video about it where I talk about some different things you can do, which I'll link up in the cards if it sounds interesting. But if you can get to know your character, it will be a lot easier to roleplay, to decide what your character does in game. And I feel like when you don't know your character, you sometimes get decision paralysis. You can't decide what your character would do, you can't decide what to do. So I think this can really, really help with that because the more you know your character, the more you will know how they would react to things. And that can be really, really helpful. Now, this next one.
All right. So, yeah, I did cut her off. I mean, heck, she had almost half of that tip left to go before, from where I went. Yeah. This is very much, like I said, on the gaming level, on the role play level, on the, hey, get to know your character, be in touch with your character, become immersed in your character, all of which is good stuff and is fantastic, especially from a narrative standpoint. But you do have to also have that side where you are not projecting yourself into the game. Otherwise, a lot of things go wrong. So let's see what the second tip is, or the second skill.
Is really, really important, and that is communication. It is really, really important to have good communication when you're playing almost any TTRPG. You need to be able to talk to the others at the table about what you want from the game, about maybe if you have anything that you don't want in game, if you have any boundaries or anything. It is really, really good to be able to communicate this stuff as well as what you want in game. Communicating is really, really important for these games, and it's good to be able to talk to your DM and the other players. And communication also works the other way. You also have to listen to others when they are trying to communicate something to you. If one of the other players has a boundary that they don't want crossed in game, it is really, really important to respect that. Or maybe if some people are hogging a lot of spotlight and some players don't really have much time in the spotlight and they would like some more, remember that some players are just quieter and don't enjoy the spotlight as much. But if they're kind of having trouble coming in and they want to come in a bit more, then you can help. If you just ask them what they're doing or what their character thinks about this can really, really help. Communication and being able to read the table is really, really important. And I think making your intentions clear and being able to help and respect others, whether that is the players or the DM, is really, really important. Now, this last one.
Okay, so that's just basic interpersonal relationship stuff. This is, I mean, to be perfectly honest, if you don't have at least some very basic communication skills, you really don't need to be playing these games at all. These are social games, and more so than just say, hey, going to a party or being part of a social gathering or a movie night or something, you have real potential to ruin everything for everyone else as a player in these games. So it's kind of hard to say, well, you really need to be aware of this because if you're garbage at communication, you probably don't really recognize it. It's kind of a hard thing. So the real key here, it comes into what she said about listening, and that is you got to start focusing on picking up on social cues and understanding what those are. And if you're not sure, you need to ask. But like I said, this is basic human interaction stuff. It's not even really D&D skills. It's just being an adult. And that's really kind of what it comes down to. It is you can't just sit there and be a mute and not talk to people and expect them to read your mind. And always remember to follow rule -1. Don't be a dick.
One is a bit different, and some players don't have any trouble with this whatsoever. But then it is also a eternal struggle for some, and that is trying to learn to not worry about being silly or being cringe at the table. And I think this is incredibly hard for some players because you do tend to worry about what people think of you or worrying about whether what you're doing in game is silly. And I think it's really, really important to try and save yourself from this feeling because you're not going to have nearly as much fun playing D&D if you're constantly worried about being judged or being seen as silly. If you're constantly worried about being judged or constantly worried that what your character does reflects badly on you. And I think this comes a lot from your surroundings. If you're playing with people you trust, you will start to open up more and have a bit more fun around them. Whereas if you're playing with people that you don't really think you can be silly around, then you're going to have a lot more trouble. I think a lot of it depends on how well you know the people you're playing with and how much you trust them. And I think that makes the game so much more fun for them.
Okay, so that last one is another one of those ones that's kind of a just a basic social behavior thing. Realistically, when you're talking about, don't, worry about being cringe or being silly at the table. One is you kind of have to be able to let yourself go a little bit to truly enjoy these games and to truly get everything out of them. But at the same time, a lot of this is things that you should have already kind of figured out before you start playing these games. Because if you're the kind of person who's constantly running people off and losing friends because of stupid shit you say, that's probably a clear sign that you don't know how to pick up on these cues. So you should concentrate more on picking up those cues. And when it comes to like, oh, don't be silly, don't be cringe, worried about what people are going to judge, what you're going to do. I would say that the way you kind of put a barometer on that is you should be asking yourself, what kind of judgment is it that I would be scared of, so to speak? So, oh, my character is going to do this thing. Man, people might laugh at me. They might think it's stupid, or they might think it's lame, or they might be like, oh, yeah, man, great idea. That was so stupid. Go ahead and do that. Okay, go ahead and do that. Because trust me, you'll surprise yourself. You'll surprise the other players all the time. I say it all the time. your players are dumber than you think they are as a game master, and it's because they deal with imperfect information. Same thing comes when when you're talking about a player doing something quote unquote cringy or whatever. The other players don't see things from your perspective, and they can't see them from your perspective until you do something. However, if you're thinking, man, they might judge me for this because they might think I'm a weirdo, or they might think I'm some kind of pedophile, or they think I'm, oh my God, they're going to think I watch the weird cartoon porno and stuff like that. They're going to, maybe they're going to think I'm a sicko, or they're going to think I got bodies in the basement or something. All right, then you probably shouldn't do it. All right. As a matter of fact, you should ask yourself why you thought it'd be a good idea in the first place. Like, maybe I'm playing a completely psychotic or sociopathic character, and I'm like, man, this is really fucked up. I wonder if my players are going to think less of me for doing this. Yeah, maybe you need to temper it or ease in on it or something. But if you're playing like regular run of the mill, lawful neutral or even chaotic good character or something like that, and the thing you're thinking about doing, you're thinking these people might, my other players might look at me funny and wonder if I need, if we need a police on speed dial, or if maybe I should be involuntarily committed, then yeah, that's probably something you should not do. But she is absolutely right. And this is a video where she's pretty spot on down the line. Every piece of advice is a good piece of advice. The only thing I would add is that there are some places where she misses the flip side of the coin. And I think that's because she's a newer player, a newer game master, very young in her tabletop role-playing game experience. So she's only kind of seen the more prevalent side of things. And in a lot of cases, the more, the rosier side of things, the more optimistic side of things, as opposed to the unfortunate neck-bearded, that guy side of things. But otherwise, like I said, all the advice here is awesome. You probably should follow her channel. She's definitely modern D&D. She's definitely nothing earth-shattering at this point, but good, solid, basic advice, good, short, easily digestible videos, and really the kind of content that, especially when you start looking at the new school or the modern player base, this is the kind of stuff you should promote, because you would much, much rather come across new, younger players who figured out all their extras on how to play from Brianna than you would, say, Jenny D or Pointy Hat. So anyway, guys, that's what I've got to say on this one. Let me know what you got below, and I will see you guys next time.